Okay, it is time. So I think we can go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. Before we really get into it, just a note that today's program will be recorded and shared on our YouTube page. I believe I have all of you muted and with cameras off right now, but the chat is open, and we'll also have time at the end for you to ask questions, and you can unmute yourself and put your video on if you'd like at that time. So let me share my screen, get our PowerPoint up. Okay. So thank you all for joining me for tonight's One Night Stand presentation. This is a series of presentations that we do at the Cedar Rapids Museum of Art where we focus on one work of art and one artist for one night. Tonight, we're focusing on Lauren Tucci's Wretched Couch from 2019, which is currently on display in the exhibition From the Outside Looking In, Interior Spaces in Art until May 3rd. And tonight is very exciting because we actually have the artist, Lauren Tucci, with us, joining us to have a conversation about this piece and her other work as well. So before we get started with our conversation, let me tell you a little bit about her. Lauren Tucci received her Bachelor of Fine Arts degree at Edinburgh University of Pennsylvania with a concentration in studio ceramics and minors in art history and psychology. Tucci is a former resident artist at the Iowa Ceramic Center and Glass Studio. Her work has been featured in various publications, including Ceramics Monthly, and has been exhibited nationally and internationally. Tucci currently works as the exhibitions and collection manager at the Northern Clay Center and is a fine art appraiser of personal property with the International Society of Appraisers. So thank you so much for joining us tonight, Lauren.
Thank you for inviting me.
Of course, we're happy to have you. So I know we want to spend a good chunk of our time talking about Wretched Couch, but before we get there, I wanted to kind of go back a little bit and ask you to tell us a little bit about your path as an artist and a ceramicist, if you will.
Yeah, so I got started with the interest in making art in high school, like a lot of people, very early on. And then I had like the best art teacher, Jay Corpa, who really just like allowed me to flourish and, find my own way. He had gone to Edinburgh University, and highly recommended going to that college. But before I wound up at Edinburgh, I went off to a community college, and at that time, I had fallen in love with printmaking.
Hmm.
And I thought I was really going to dive into being a printmaker. So a lot of my early college work was that. Um, but then, like as I was going through that, as we know that these instructors and community colleges, they're teaching multiple classes. They're not just teaching like one type of medium. And that particular professor was like, you should take my ceramic class. I think you would be really apt for it. Um, and that's kind of like where everything got started. And I took that ceramics class, fell deeply in love with the medium. And then I went to Edinburgh to major in ceramics, particularly. And so, like, some of this early stuff kind of has like remnants of printmaking or
I
like
was,
maybe the ideas of it.
I was going to ask about that, if the printmaking impacted the ceramics. Yeah.
Yes. Yep. Um, so as I transitioned from two dimensions to three dimensions, ceramics particularly is a vessel-based medium. And so a lot of my early work is vessels and pots, and particularly Greek urns,
Hmm.
with a lot of design work on it, right? A lot of sgraffito and imagery based. Um, when I got to Edinburgh, I got pushed to do different things and got to try out a whole bunch of different methods of making things. And this piece that you're looking at right here, Taken, is the first time I made like sculpture as an idea, as like, something that's not assembled particularly, out of found objects. And all of these pieces that you're looking at are cast.
Hmm.
So it's flip cast in multiple part molds.
Do you mind briefly explaining what that means, slip casting?
What does that mean? So it's where the structure of the clay is. Oh, you're really testing my chemical knowledge here. Um,
Well, just in layman's terms, for anyone who doesn't know or hasn't experienced that before.
sure, sure. So slip casting is more of a commercial process. When you buy mugs or bowls from department stores, those are all slip cast typically. And so it's a more mass produced process with liquid clay. You pour it into a plaster mold. You let it sit up, stiffen up a bit, and you pour out the rest of the clay that you don't want. You usually leave like a little bit of a buildup, and then you give it time to dry a little bit in the mold, and then you open it up. Um, is that explanation enough?
That was great. Yeah.
Okay, great. I was like deflocculants and chemicals, and thank you for reining me back in.
No, you're perfect. That was great. So I know this piece came from the Ceramic Center period, right? And it's one that's in our collection. For those that don't know, we have a great relationship with the Ceramic Center where we will come out and see the shows for the residents at the end of their residency. And we select a piece for the collection to be added to the collection, which is great. It gives the residents a chance to talk about their work with a curator and talk about it in relation to it being in a museum in a permanent collection. And it also gives us a chance to collect kind of up and coming ceramicists as well. So this is from that period. So tell us what was going on here.
Yes, so when I was learning all of these different processes through college, I was very taken to portrait sculpture. And I actually won an award for the NCECA student juried exhibition for one of those portrait sculptures. And I kind of kept rolling that into some more concepts. One is a portrait sculpture is very technical and you're depicting the person as they are the sitter. And so I started to play with more concepts here. So reaction without the rest of its parts, because I was able to donate the portrait portion of it, may not make a whole lot of sense when I talk about this. The whole piece has some masks that are involved through like a window, and it's a reflection, not reflection type of a thought. And what I really started focusing on was the self, our perceptions of ourselves or our perceptions of other people that are around us. And so a lot of the psychology training in college too is being fed into these pieces. And so reaction, you see some obvious blemishes on the skin. The skin does not look healthy. You know, the eyes are like too large for what a normal person's eyes would look like. And so it's perception and allowing the viewer to maybe consider some of these facets rather, to feed the narrative a bit more.
Mm-hmm. And the body, I know, is something that has held interest for you. And I think I have other examples here too. And it's something that plays a role in Wretched Couch as well. But in this earlier work too, we see a lot of this interest in the body. And I was wondering how that became an interest for you, or why is that kind of an area of expression in your work?
Yeah, it's the easiest way to say that I want to talk about people.
Mm,
Um, you know, we have body parts, we have eyes, we have hands, we have necks, we have hair, if you talk about the self, or these interpersonal relationships, like the easiest way to depict that with imagery is to put your human parts there, without having to sculpt like a full-fledged figure. Um, so the body is a complete through line from early work until now. You saw that earlier with the tongue, with the bird, even, and that continues today.
and I think, yeah, we have another earlier piece again with that interest in the body here too.
And then you see like a lot more objects being
Hmm.
incorporated into each like level as we keep going.
And that's a good transition into my next question too, which is about the objects, and particularly kind of the household objects too. Here's a detail of overreaching, but a little later here, and kind of starting to think about those household objects. What sparked that idea to move toward these objects, but very interestingly modified objects?
Yeah, a lot of the object inspiration is because I started watching a lot more movies. Um, there's a particular correlation here that I have to like bring into the conversation. My partner went to film school and I started watching a lot of these movies, a lot of movies. And then I became really fixated on what's happening in the background of the movies, the set, how the objects in the background of the movies informed the narrative. And that's where I started picking up all of these objects and being fascinated with them and how they could lead the viewer along and become symbols in the discussion. Um, yeah. And so this is a cactus. I love fungus.
It's great. So also the combination of the body and the object and the kind of decorative object here too,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
which I know we'll
I
talk more
wanted,
about too.
yeah, yeah. I was specifically with this series, the cactuses. I really wanted somebody to walk into a room and just presume that there was a cactus already in that house. I kind of want them to blend in, um, to stand alone as art pieces, but also to maybe prompt further inspection, or maybe being passed all together, and that would make me happy. That's like that trompe l'oeil part
Hmm.
of my inspiration that I really lean into a lot.
And so was that kind of part of how you choose which objects to represent? Is that idea of it could just be something that you kind of came across and it is kind of an easily overlooked thing? Is that part of choosing the objects to represent?
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely part of it, especially when it comes to decorative art objects that are already found in the house, plants or other strange objects that we might get to later on in your
Yeah.
slides. Um, but then also they're just things that we already understand.
Mhm.
We already have attachment to, and so there's not a lot of education that you have to do to understand something is a cactus or
Mhm.
um, some something has an eyeball in it, and so it becomes less accessible and less of a high academic thought.
Mm. Yeah, that's great. So now we come back to Wretched Couch, the piece that's in the exhibition. So specifically for this work, can you tell us about what went into creating it?
In what way?
Well, how did this idea first start? How did this idea first come about?
I really wanted to have a discussion as an object. And
Hmm.
that's where this came from. I started, this path of this was really the path that, or like the first piece that I made that started on the objects, right? The household objects. Um, so this was a launching point. This was kind of just like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just doing it. Um, and to have a conversation and thinking about that, we end up having a lot of conversations on our couch.
Hmm.
We end up having a lot more time spent maybe in the living room. And that's why the Wretched Couch arms are featured, like the arms of a couch are featured. Um, and then I just tried to figure out how to have a conversation with it. And then I thought, I'll just put mouths on it.
Well, it is that kind of like the literal like manifestation
Yeah,
of wanting to have a
it's
conversation.
the yeah, it's the literal, it's the literal point of, well, if these objects could talk, what might they say? uh, so that's where that all came from. And then all of these mouths are actually modeled after my own. So some of the teeth you can see that are actually mine.
Oh, wow. How cool. And even like the style of the couch, how did you land on that sort of tufted, almost sort of it looks almost kind of like a brushed suede or something, in that sort of blue color. How did you land on that, the style that you chose?
um, Purely because I thought it would look more like a couch than so the tufted parts, there's a whole bunch of different kinds of arms that you would come across, and I think it would be too nondescript to do
Mhm.
something that didn't have the tuft. So that was that choice, which was pretty easy. Um, but I went back and forth about making it a red couch. That was definitely something I toyed with quite a lot, but I didn't want it to immediately be associated with anger.
Hmm.
A red couch with the mouths would be a little bit too leading. I wanted it to be open to interpretation a little bit more.
Yeah. And something that I am always so curious about are the two buttons. Because there's only the two, one on each arm, and I've always been
Mm-hmm.
curious about those.
So it became a design choice based off of an oopsie.
Hmm.
So, I know. So in this particular image, the arm on the right, there's a button towards the back. And I had been working on this for a long time, and it was starting to get past the point of being able to add clay to. I could keep reducing and reducing, but I couldn't add things back. And I had carved right through that particular tuft,
Hmm.
and I couldn't mend it. And so instead of fighting it, in my mind, I was like, well, there's buttons on these. I'll find a button and I'll glue it on.
Yeah. And I think it
Um,
adds,
yeah. And then to bring a little continuity to it, and also like for photography purposes, I did add another button so that it would have a mate or maybe create a connection point.
mhm.
Um, so that's why the buttons exist.
That's great. I'm so glad to know that now. It'll pop up in future tours as we discuss the piece. Um, and that too, as you're kind of talking about actually creating it, how long does a piece like this take?
Well, I had worked on this for a really long time, not for the reason that it needed the amount of time, but because I was working a couple of jobs, and
Hmm.
I, was, oscillating between, how it needed to come to fruition too. So this took about 6 months to make,
Okay.
in its entirety. And I don't regret having the amount of time that I spent on it. Like I would say now that I probably spent too much time, on it to finish it, but it allowed me to work through the idea a little bit longer. And I feel like if I had finished it faster, I maybe wouldn't have had the same kinds of considerations.
Hmm. That's interesting. Yeah, very cool. So, detail overall. So, we saw kind of the start of this idea with Wretched Couch, but I also have some images of more recent objects. Um, so, kind of continuing some of that same idea, but doing something a little different here too, I think. Can you tell us about where this idea has gone?
Um, where has the idea gone? I don't know. I'm just kind of letting it roll through into more pieces. Like, I'm judging and pointing was a direct relationship to interior design objects,
Hmm.
that are mass produced. And we're back to that like mass production idea, or maybe subverting it in some way. Um, you know, hiding things in people's houses that might look like one thing and then upon further inspection be another. Um, so that's where these two are. And then also like I've added gold to it, which is and I shouldn't say gold, it's metal leaf. So it's like fake gold, leaning into maybe a more pump, like the idea of things being expensive even though they're not. Um, and also kind of maybe looking at like my interest really in historical objects too. Like I
Mm,
really take a lot of inspiration from like turn of the century things
mm,
generally. And then this gold here is also revealing, in particularly this piece pointing a lot of that red bowl, which is BOLE, is a treatment for historic frames, that you put the
mm.
gold leaf over top of. And so if you go to a museum, you can sometimes see this red bowl come through, in like veining and other nicks and whatnot. So there's that too.
And for kind of playing with that idea of the interior design objects, what was it about that that kind of excited you?
It excited me in the sense that I got to poke fun a bit more. I like humor. A lot of the influence here also is like surrealist ideas
Hmm.
to where things become kind of funny, in a way too. I got to poke fun at our contemporary leaders, if you will,
Hmm.
um, to maybe draw attention to how cheap or weird or um, how silly they could be.
Yeah, it's interesting to take something that in a store can be so kind of without meaning, and then you put all these sort of layers onto it that you've talked to us about tonight with the humor and the surrealism and yeah, everything that you're adding to it and making it into something that is then full of meaning and interest instead of just being kind of an empty object, which is really interesting. Um, I know there's so many questions to ask in so little time. These evenings go so fast. But when you think about the landscape of contemporary ceramics, which this is a big question, so take the answer however you want to. But how do you see yourself fitting into contemporary ceramics or perhaps pushing against those ideas?
I don't know that I would be pushing against anything because currently, like contemporary ceramics has been opened up
Mm,
to more fine art perceptions, right? Um, Not too long ago, ceramics was really just a craft, and
mm-hmm,
you were making and producing pottery and things that were utilitarian. But now the contemporary landscape of ceramics is being fostered in fine art in the fine art world. Um, so I don't know that I would be pushing against anything, but I would be certainly pushing against like the traditions of um, of the medium. I don't glaze the work.
mm-hmm.
I paint it, or I put metal leaf on it. I put buttons on it. um, so I think that might be like the push. But as far as like where it falls generally, I would be somewhere between figurative sculptors, and there is and specifically with Wretched Couch, there is a big trend that we see also with contemporary furniture or ceramic furniture rather.
Mm. I know you haven't spent a lot of time in the studio lately. I know you've been really busy, but do you have plans for what you're working on next, what you want to do next in your practice?
I do. I have an idea for a floor piece that has been percolating for some time. The execution of it does require a bit of engineering
Hmm.
and planning. Um, and if you want me to divulge like that particular project idea, or I can keep it vague.
Well, I don't want you to have to share any secrets, but whatever you want to tell is perfect.
It's not necessarily a secret, but I am like expanding some of these objects to like a food item or like small luxuries. And so the floor piece I'd like to create is a box of chocolate,
Mhm.
but still having these components carry through. And again, it's like the gold. So the gold and those other pieces, and like the luxury item of the like very posh box of chocolates. Um, Even though it's new for me for food.
Hmm. Very cool. Well, I want to make sure that we have time for everyone to ask questions. So let me stop sharing and let me allow you to unmute yourselves if you would like. Are there any questions for Lauren?
Usually the first question I get is like, why aren't there any cushions?
That is a good question. And I know that there is one, just right, the little one, but I believe that's in a private collection.
That is in a private collection, and it was not made with Wretched Couch. It was an afterthought.
Oh, okay, okay. But was it intended to still be part of or intended to kind of be a companion piece? Okay.
It was made after the fact because, as we all know, artists need to make money. Uh, and when I conceived of Wretched Couch, I had no idea that it would ever sell, ever. To my surprise, it did. But I did not know or feel like it would ever sell, so I just decided to make a cushion, like a little bolster, to go with it.
Mhm.
With it. um, but the is there a
Skyla has
question?
a question.
Yeah.
Yes.
How do you make the couch one? The couch.
How do you make the couch one?
Yeah.
How do I make the couch? So that was all coil built. There is an internal scaffold of sorts to keep the piece standing up as I was making it, but it's all coil built, and then there was just a slab at the bottom.
Very good question. Are there other questions?
Yes, from Victoria. Go ahead and unmute yourself and ask.
Oh, hello, Lauren. My question was, I'm enjoying seeing the objects. It's great to get to see your work. Do you have a story or a movie in your head, perhaps that's ongoing about the objects accumulating or future objects?
I don't. I love that idea,
Mm-hmm.
that they continue to have the narrative and it just like persists. I did have a show a number of years ago, and what was it called? Objects for Cinema. And I did have the idea to have Act One, Two, and Three. I only ever exhibited Act One.
Hmm.
So that's interesting that you bring that up. I would love to rekindle Act Two and Three, maybe based off of those objects, and continue that narrative. Um, I hope that answers your question, but you've also made me think a little bit further.
Oh, I'm so glad. I can't wait to hear the rest of the story, and I think your objects give a unique story to everyone, of course, but your story matters a lot, so thank you.
Thank you.
Another great question. Any more questions for Lauren? One that I have is, what do you wish I'd asked you that I did not ask you during this talk?
That's so hard. What do I wish you would have asked me? I don't know.
Okay.
I hmm. Although I did like, I usually hate the question of like who is your influences? Who are your
Oh,
art
yes.
influences?
Yeah, we didn't do that. Yeah.
Well, and I usually get that question and I freeze because a lot of my influences aren't 100% from earlier artists. But what I could talk about is the particular connection from printmaking to ceramics
Mm.
is that I was very much inspired by Odilon Redon as a printmaker. And I think, after many, many years and looking back to these inspirations, I can see now that particularly that one most famous piece from Odilon was the balloon with the eye, right?
Hmm.
Um, and how objecty it was. It's a two-dimensional piece, but it was so object based. And I think that's where a lot of this ends up coming from and continues to pull from too. And that's all like turn of the century, era work,
Totally. Yeah,
symbolist movement. Yeah.
it all connects. That's great.
Hmm.
Nice. Well, any final questions for Lauren? Otherwise, thank you all so much for being here tonight. And thank you so much, Lauren, for doing this. I really appreciate it. And it was wonderful to hear more about your work and to learn more about Wretched Couch as well. So I really appreciate it. And this has been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Have a wonderful evening, everyone. And I hope you'll join us again for these presentations in the future. Have a great night. Bye bye.